The greatest fighter on the planet right now is gearing up for the biggest challenge of his career at UFC 284 in February. Alexander the Great Volkanovski is currently preparing for a showdown with Islam Makhachev in a bid to become a two-division champion in what he believes will be a defining year. Today we're discussing Volk's recent claims plus Charles Oliveira's thoughts on how the big fight will go down. Stay tuned. First up, another sad loss for the sport of MMA. It's probably not that much of a stretch to suggest that without Stephan Bonnar, the UFC wouldn't be what it is today. The legendary Hall of Famer was involved in arguably the most important UFC fight ever back in 2005, as he took on the former light heavyweight champion Forrest Griffin during the finale of The Ultimate Fighter 1, which received national acclaim for its incredible back and forth. Bonnar would unfortunately lose the fight as well as the rematch the following year, but he would establish himself as a firm favorite of fight fans for the remainder of his career due to the heart and will he showed. The winner of the first fight with Griffin was supposed to be awarded a UFC contract, but it was so good that the UFC ended up handing Bonnar one too. Sadly, news broke late on Christmas Eve that Stephan had passed away whilst at work due to heart complications. Following the devastating news, Dana White released a statement on the official UFC website, which read, "Stephan Bonnar was one of the most important fighters to ever compete in the octagon. His fight with Forrest Griffin changed the sport forever, and he will never be forgotten. The fans loved him, related to him, and he always gave them his best. He will be missed." A truly sad day which rounds out a terrible year after the passing of Anthony Johnson earlier this year too. A heartwarming Twitter exchange involves one of Volk's featherweight rivals now. Stay with us. Arnold Allen has designs on challenging Volk for his featherweight title in 2023, but the English favorite has recently been involved in a fun back and forth with another of the sport's good guys, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Both Allen and Thompson are widely regarded as two of the sport's nicest guys, and after Arnold took to Twitter to say he loved watching Wonderboy fight, the welterweight replied. Thompson said, "Thank you so much, brother. I love watching you put on show. Merry Christmas, my friend." Of course, being the stand-up guy Arnold Allen is, he went one better and kept the well wishes going by saying, "You're the man, thank you, and happy Christmas to you too." Allen will be hoping to put the disappointment of being overlooked as an interim title shot behind him this year and finally challenge for the title. I mean, not including a man who has won all 10 of his UFC fights for an interim shot borders on crazy. But we know the UFC is far from a meritocracy. Next up, Volk has discussed the potential return of Zabit Magomedsharipov. Following a recent social media post by Zabit, which suggested he could be set to reverse his retirement, Volk has suggested that he may be open to a fight with the Russian somewhere down the line. Magomedsharipov hasn't been seen in the UFC for more than 3 years and announced his retirement earlier this year. However, there have been murmurings he could be set to make a comeback, and Volk explained that he had always hoped to fight the talented featherweight one day. He said, "The thing is, I want fights. I want big fights." I feel like he was gonna be in a big fight. There was a lot of hype around him, but once again, I want people to earn that spot as well. Volk has continually spoken of fighting the best fighters to solidify his legacy, and Zabit would almost certainly fall into this category. And Volk continued by explaining that he was one fight away from fighting for the title at one point, so he would probably be willing to revisit the idea of fighting him should he return. What do you guys make of this one? Volk has given his thoughts on what happens if Islam takes him down next. Stick around. When UFC 284 rolls around early next year, MMA enthusiasts will be locking in to what happens in Australia as Volk bids to join the Champ Club, and many are expecting Makhachev to be able to take the featherweight king down whenever he wants to. Of course, we have more faith in Volk than that, and speaking about that exact scenario recently, Volkanovski has promised that if that does happen, he will not panic. Of course, Makhachev is a fearsome wrestler and possesses insane strength, so Volk is preparing for every eventuality. He told Michael Bisping on his Believe You Me podcast recently, "There's a good chance he might get the takedown. He might get a nice trip, whatever it is. I won't be surprised if he doesn't. I'm working everything right now, but if it doesn't, I guarantee you this, I'm gonna be composed, I'm gonna be calm, and I'm gonna be fighting my ass off to get back to my feet, and I will not panic," which will calm the nerves of his loyal fans no end. Volk continued by suggesting that if he does lose, it won't be through lack of preparation. The challenge of beating a bigger man and taking his title is one which seriously excites Volk, and he finished by adding, "Again, a lot of people think he's unstoppable right now, but I'm gonna show you that he is stoppable. I can't wait to get out there and do my thing." So what has Volk been saying about his lightweight title bid? Well, as we know, Volkanovski is the pound-for-pound king right now, as well as the undisputed featherweight champ, but he will attempt to become a two-weight champion in early 2023 as he takes on the recently crowned champion Islam Makhachev. Volk has faced concerns that he won't be big enough at 145, but since the fight was announced, the Aussie superstar has packed on a considerable amount of size. Of course, Volk is no stranger to being a bigger guy, and it is common knowledge that he regularly topped 200 pounds during his rugby days. During his MMA career, he's fought as high as welterweight, so it shouldn't be too difficult for him to pile on the pounds, which he will need to do to deal with Islam's strength. Speaking recently, the featherweight king revealed that he's going to be more ready than ever, whilst also suggesting he is also going to be stronger than ever, and he will need to be. Islam is one of the stronger guys at 145, so coming up from featherweight's going to be a challenge in itself. He went on, "I'm already filling up. I'm already holding more muscle than I originally did in my last few fights. I'm already stronger, significantly stronger." Volk believes that 2023 will be his biggest year yet, calling it his defining year, claiming that it starts off with taking out Islam. Do you guys think he has what it takes to get the job done? Chael Sonnen has given his thoughts on how he sees the fight going now. Many people around the sport of MMA are suggesting that Islam Makhachev simply has to turn up to retain his lightweight title against Volk at UFC 284. But we definitely are not part of that particular group. Neither is Chael Sonnen. Motormouth himself recently suggested that an upset could be on the cards when Islam heads down under in February, but he doesn't particularly see it as a shock or a big upset in any way. Of course, Volk is ranked higher in the pound-for-pound rankings and has far more experience, as well as double the win streak length. Sonnen recently claimed on his YouTube channel that he wouldn't be surprised at all if Volk came away with the win, saying, "No, of course not. Alexander Volkanovski is #1 ranked and Islam is #5 ranked," meaning he expects Volk to put up more of a fight than most casuals do. He went on to explain, "You have to turn to the P4P list. That's the only list both guys are on. Volkanovski, who's never lost. Volkanovski, who's ranked higher. How would that be shocking news? If Volkanovski gets beat, any element of that fight that goes against Volk will be something that's never happened before." And we couldn't agree more. The idea that Volk won't even put up a fight against Islam is, quite frankly, an insult to the best fighter on the planet right now. Do you agree with Chael? And finally, Charles Oliveira has stopped by with his thoughts on the title fight. Stay tuned. Oliveira lost the lightweight crown back in October, as Islam ran through him inside 2 rounds to snatch the title. And he's recently been discussing how he sees Islam's first defense going. Of course, it could have Charles himself coming up against Volk in February, but events did not turn out that way for the Brazilian. Oliveira sat down to give his thoughts to a Brazilian podcast recently, suggesting that Islam will probably be too big and strong for Volkanovski. He says, "If Islam is able to close the distance and take him down, there's nothing much left to do. However, taking Volk down and keeping him there will be far easier said than done." Oliveira, however, appeared to acknowledge that particular facet and continued, "But Volkanovski has great takedown defense and strong hands. If he's able to move and control the distance, he may surprise Islam. It will be a question of who will implement his game plan better." Makhachev is on a tear at the moment and is currently the owner of an 11-fight win streak. His wrestling is widely acknowledged to be some of the best in the UFC, if not all time, and many people have suggested he will simply be too much for the Aussie. However, Volk should have a big speed advantage and is riding a pretty epic win streak of his own right now, having won his past 22 fights. How do you see it going? As always, thanks for dropping by today, and remember to join us again next time for some more fun reveals. And why not do us a big favor by liking, sharing, and subscribing to our channel? Bye, guys.